"It's too deep, please pull it out." The rancher reached and discovered the wound. Wild West. The sun was low over Red Mesa, the sky painted in streaks of deep orange and soft purple. The twin suns of the frontier planet were beginning to sink behind the jagged cliffs, casting long shadows over the dusty landscape. Silas Granger, the rancher, wiped sweat from his brow as he adjusted the wide-brimmed hat perched on his head. His eyes scanned the horizon, following the slow, steady movement of the robotic cattle grazing among the rocky hills. The ranch on Red Mesa was unlike any on Earth. Instead of rolling green pastures, it stretched over red dust, metal rock formations, and windswept valleys. The livestock were mostly artificial now, machines programmed to mimic the behaviors of real animals. They had been designed to withstand a harsh environment, but Silas often joked that the machines had more personality than some humans he'd met in the colony towns. "Jibby," Silas said, tapping the side of his wrist device, "any signs of trouble today?" The small AI unit perched on his shoulder chirped. Its metallic wings flickered with blue light as it hovered slightly above him. "Temperature normal, solar wind steady. No anomalies detected, Silas," Jibby replied in its calm, melodic tone. "All livestock systems are operating within parameters." Silas nodded, though his attention was elsewhere. There was a faint shimmer in the soil near one of the irrigation probes he had installed last week. It had caught his eye several times over the day, but he had convinced himself it was just the reflection of the setting sun. Still, something about it tugged at him, a feeling he couldn't quite shake. He walked toward the shimmer, boots kicking up red dust as he moved. The ground here was dry and cracked in places, yet strangely soft beneath his weight. He bent down and ran a finger over the spot, feeling a vibration that wasn't natural. It was faint, almost like a pulse, but steady. "What in the world?" he muttered. Jibby hovered closer, scanning the soil with tiny beams of light. "Unknown object detected. Material density exceeds common metals. Recommendation, caution." Silas chuckled softly. "Caution, huh? That's my middle name, little buddy." He grabbed a small digging tool from his belt and started to carefully scrape the soil away. The shimmer grew brighter as more dirt was removed, and soon a tiny glimmering fragment emerged. It was small, no larger than his fist, but unlike anything he had ever seen. Smooth and silver, it pulsed with a faint blue light, almost as if it were breathing. Silas held it in his palm, feeling a strange warmth spreading through his fingers. It was alive, or at least it felt alive. "Whoa," he whispered. "You're not supposed to do that." Jibby beeped nervously. "Object is responding to touch. Caution advised. Unknown energy detected." Silas looked at the fragment closely. It seemed to shift under his gaze, changing shape subtly, almost like it was adjusting itself to his presence. He turned it over, careful not to drop it. The shimmer inside seemed to deepen, sending soft waves through the dust at his feet. The ranch suddenly felt silent. Even the robotic cattle had paused, heads lifted as if sensing the unusual event. A strange hum filled the air, low and steady, vibrating against the canyon walls. Silas's heart quickened. He had lived on Red Mesa for over a decade, seen meteor showers, solar storms, and even a few wandering space traders, but nothing like this. "All right," he said aloud, mostly to himself. "Let's see what you really are." He held the fragment above the soil and tried to examine it with the built-in sensors on Jibby. Beams of light scanned the object, but the readings were confusing. Energy levels fluctuated rapidly, patterns shifting before they could stabilize. "It's not just metal," Jibby said. "It appears to contain a biological element. Unknown origin." Silas frowned. "Biological? You mean it's alive?" "Uncertain. Activity suggests awareness, possibly reactive intelligence." Silas's eyebrows shot up. "Reactive intelligence? On my ranch? Out here in the middle of nowhere?" He looked around at the sprawling red canyon, the way the cliffs caught the last rays of the suns, the robotic cattle grazing lazily. Everything seemed so ordinary, so calm. Yet here he was holding something extraordinary, something that didn't belong to this world. "Okay," he said finally. "I need to be careful. Don't want to break it or get hurt." He set the fragment carefully on a flat rock nearby and sat down. The hum continued, soft but persistent. It wasn't threatening. In fact, it almost felt like it was calling him, asking for attention. Silas leaned closer, studying the patterns of light flickering across its surface. "What do you need, little one?" he asked quietly. Jibby floated beside him. "Caution advised, Silas. Unknown entity may require special handling." Silas nodded slowly. "Yeah, I got that. But sometimes you have to take risks, otherwise life stays boring. He remembered the stories his grandfather used to tell him about the Old West back on Earth. Cowboys riding into the unknown, facing challenges bigger than themselves, discovering things no one had ever seen before. This felt a lot like that, only with a touch of the future. As the twin suns dipped completely behind the cliffs, the light dimmed, and the shimmer from the fragment became more pronounced. Silas felt a strange energy in the air, like static electricity rising through his skin. The canyon seemed to hold its breath, as though waiting for his next move. He reached toward the fragment again, this time letting his fingers hover just above it. The pulse grew stronger, almost like a heartbeat, and the faint hum became a low, melodic vibration. He could feel it resonating in his chest, in his bones, in the very ground beneath him. "Jibby, do you feel that?" he asked. "I am detecting heightened energy activity," Jibby said, "but I cannot feel it as you do." "Only measurements." Silas smiled. "Measurements can only tell you so much, little buddy. Sometimes you've got to trust your instincts." He slowly extended his hand, and the fragment seemed to respond, shifting slightly to match the contour of his fingers. For a brief moment it felt like a handshake, a connection between the rancher and the unknown. Suddenly, the ground beneath the fragment trembled slightly. Not violently, just a subtle vibration, like the planet itself was reacting. Silas froze. He could feel the warmth of the fragment against his palm again, stronger now, and a faint glow spreading outward, illuminating the cracks in the red soil. The robotic cattle murmured in low mechanical tones, almost as if commenting on the scene. Silas chuckled nervously. "You guys see this, right? Don't look at me like that." Carefully, he dug a small trench and placed the fragment inside, covering it partially with soft red dust. He wanted it safe, yet still close enough to observe. As he packed away his tools, Silas felt a strange sense of anticipation. The ranch had always been a quiet place, a safe place, a place where the most exciting events were dust storms and unexpected solar flares. But tonight something extraordinary had arrived, buried beneath his feet. "Tomorrow," he said to Jibby, "we find out what you really are." The AI chirped in agreement, its lights dimming as the evening settled over Red Mesa. The canyon walls glowed softly in the twilight, and the wind whispered through the rocks, carrying a faint, almost musical tone. Silas felt a shiver of excitement run through him. The frontier was no longer just red dust and rock. It had a heartbeat, and it was calling to him. He mounted his hover horse and took one last look at the small trench. The fragment pulsed faintly, a tiny beacon of mystery beneath the soil. Silas's eyes sparkled with curiosity. He had no idea what he had uncovered, but he knew one thing for certain. His life on Red Mesa was about to change forever. As he rode back to his small homestead, the twin suns disappeared completely, leaving a starry night sky above. Red Mesa had always felt lonely, quiet, and endless. But tonight, in the heart of the canyon, something had awakened, and Silas Granger, rancher and cowboy of the cosmos, would be the first to meet it. The wind blew across the red plains, carrying with it the soft hum of the unknown, and the pulse of the buried fragment echoed silently beneath the soil, waiting for the dawn. The next morning, Red Mesa awoke under a soft violet sky, the twin suns rising slowly over the jagged cliffs. Silas Granger stepped out of his small homestead, stretching his arms as the cool morning wind brushed against his face. The fragment he had discovered yesterday lay partially buried in the trench he had dug near the old irrigation probe. It glimmered faintly, as though sensing his approach. Jibby hovered at his side, flicking its lights and soft pulses. "Energy readings remain unusual, Silas. The object continues to emit low-level biological resonance." "Yeah, I know. I can feel it, too." "Something's not right, but not bad right. Just strange." He knelt beside the trench, brushing some of the red dust off the fragment. The glow intensified under his touch, and a subtle hum filled the air around him. Silas leaned closer, squinting at the smooth silver surface. For the first time, he noticed tiny, almost imperceptible patterns etched into it, like symbols, or a language written in light. "What are you trying to tell me?" Silas murmured. He carefully pulled the fragment from the trench. As he did, the ground beneath it trembled slightly, not violently, but enough to make him pause. Silas set the fragment on a flat stone nearby, and the soil seemed to pulse, as if alive. He frowned. The land had always been quiet, stubbornly still, but this was something else. Something beneath the surface had awakened. "Jibby," Silas said, pointing toward the tremor, "what is going on down there?" "I am detecting unusual activity below the surface. The soil itself appears to be responsive," Jibby replied. It is difficult to classify. Sensors indicate organic-like patterns beneath the terrain, but not comparable to any known species. Silas's brow furrowed. You mean the planet is alive? Not exactly. The readings suggest an entity or a system integrated within the soil. Highly adaptive, reactive to external stimuli. Possibly intelligent, Gibby explained. Silas felt a thrill run through him. An intelligent entity beneath the land of his ranch? This was bigger than any discovery he had ever made. He glanced around the empty canyon. The robotic cattle grazed quietly, unaware of the significance of what was happening beneath their hooves. He gathered his tools and started to carefully uncover the soil around the fragment, working slowly so as not to damage anything. As he dug, he noticed that the soil itself seemed to change, softening in certain spots and shimmering faintly in others. Every scoop of dust revealed more of the mysterious patterns faintly glowing like veins of light. Hours passed, and Silas grew more aware of the subtle energy vibrating beneath him. He paused, sitting on his heels, and placed his hand on the soil. The pulse under his palm was steady, almost like a heartbeat. He felt a deep sense of calm mixed with curiosity. It was as if the land itself was communicating with him, inviting him to listen. "Gibby, can we talk to it?" he asked. "Communication is possible. However, method and response are unpredictable," Gibby replied. "Would you like to attempt it?" Silas nodded. "Yes, but carefully." No sudden moves. He picked up a small device from his belt, a resonance tool designed to detect subtle vibrations in minerals and soil, and gently placed it on the glowing patch. The device began to hum softly, picking up signals and transmitting them as patterns on a small screen. Silas studied the display. The pulses formed shapes, almost like letters, but too fluid and abstract to read directly. "They're trying to tell me something," Silas murmured, excitement growing. "Something about what happened here long ago." The soil beneath his hand shifted again, warmer this time, pulsing in rhythm with the fragment. Silas realized that the fragment and the soil were connected somehow. Pulling the fragment from the ground yesterday may have awakened something that had been resting for centuries. He decided to leave the fragment partially exposed, wanting it to stay connected to the land. The patterns in the soil became clearer as he observed, flowing in faint lines and curves. Silas began to sketch them in his notebook, hoping to decode their meaning over time. By mid-afternoon, he noticed something unusual. A shallow indentation forming in the soil near the fragment, as if the land itself were opening slightly to reveal a hidden cavity. Silas leaned closer, careful not to disturb the delicate surface. Inside the small hollow, he could see faint glows resembling tiny crystalline structures embedded in the soil. "Gibby, what is that?" he asked. "Unknown. Energy readings are increasing. Patterns indicate complex structural design, possibly a containment or storage system." Silas stared, fascinated. The soil was not just living, it had been engineered. Somehow, long ago, something, or someone, had embedded intelligence and structure deep within Red Mesa. The realization struck him. His ranch was built over a hidden relic of the past, something ancient and mysterious. The sun began to dip toward the horizon again, casting long shadows across the canyon. Silas stood, brushing dust from his hands, and looked at the glowing hollow. He felt a mix of awe and responsibility. This discovery could change everything. He had stumbled upon a secret older than the colony itself, a hidden wound in the land that needed care, not destruction. "Looks like we've got a lot to figure out, partner," he said softly to Gibby. The AI chirped in agreement. "Recommendation: approach with caution. Begin observation protocols. Record all activity." Silas smiled. Observation was something he was good at. He had spent years tending the robotic cattle, monitoring soil moisture, and adjusting irrigation systems on Red Mesa. Now observation would take on a whole new meaning. He decided to spend the night near the site, watching and listening to the subtle pulses in the soil. As darkness fell, the twin suns disappeared, leaving a sky full of stars. The canyon walls reflected faint glimmers from the fragment and the glowing hollow beneath the soil. Silas settled on a nearby rock, Gibby hovering at his side, and watched. Hours passed. The air grew cooler and the hum from the fragment in the soil continued, constant but gentle. Silas began to notice patterns in the pulse, almost like a rhythm repeating in cycles. It was calming, almost meditative, and he found himself relaxing in the presence of this mysterious entity. Around midnight, something unexpected happened. The glow from the hollow intensified, and a soft, melodic sound filled the canyon. It was not a voice, but a series of harmonic vibrations that resonated in Silas's chest. He closed his eyes and focused, letting the sound guide him. For a moment he felt as if he were part of the land itself, connected to its heartbeat and rhythm. "Jibby, it's trying to communicate," he whispered. "Affirmative. Patterns suggest complex information transfer. Interpretation ongoing," Jibby replied. Silas concentrated on the vibrations, noticing that the pulse and hum changed in response to his movements. When he shifted his hand slightly above the hollow, the glow brightened. When he leaned closer, the hum deepened. It was a conversation without words, a dialogue of energy, light, and vibration. By the time dawn arrived, Silas felt he had learned something important. The land beneath his ranch was not broken. It was not dangerous. It had been wounded long ago, and the fragment he had uncovered was part of the key to understanding it. The soil pulsed with intelligence, waiting for someone to listen, someone patient enough to care. "We're going to figure this out," he said to the glowing hollow and the fragment resting nearby. "Slowly, carefully, together." He looked out over the canyon, watching the twin suns rise and cast a golden light over the red plains. The robotic cattle stirred, and the hum from the fragment seemed to soften, almost like a contented sigh. Red Mesa was alive in a way he had never imagined, and he was the first to witness it. "Looks like the frontier isn't just dust and rocks," he said, smiling. "It's full of secrets. And I'm lucky enough to find one of the biggest." Jibby chirped softly, lights flickering. "Observation protocols will continue. Analysis suggests entity stability improving." Status calm. "Good. Let's keep it that way. No rushing. No mistakes. We'll take it slow." For the first time in a long while, Silas felt truly connected to his ranch, the canyon, and the hidden world beneath the red soil. The fragment pulsed gently, almost in approval, and the hollow glimmered as the morning light touched it. He knew the days ahead would be filled with questions and discoveries, but he also knew that he was ready. Red Mesa had shown him its hidden wound, and Silas Granger, cowboy of the frontier, had chosen to listen. The story of the fragment in the land had only just begun, and he was determined to uncover every secret, one patient step at a time. The sun had just begun its slow climb over Red Mesa when Silas Granger stepped outside. The red dust sparkled in the early light, and the canyon walls glowed warmly. He felt a pull in his chest, an invisible tug that seemed to guide him toward the small trench where the fragment in the hidden hollow rested. Jibby hovered beside him, wings flickering with gentle light. "Energy readings have remained steady overnight. Entity activity shows mild adaptation. No threats detected," it reported. Silas nodded. "Good. We'll take it slow today." He adjusted his hat, tightened his gloves, and approached the glowing hollow. The fragment sat nearby, pulsing faintly like a quiet heartbeat. He knelt beside it, brushing dust from its smooth surface. The glow intensified at his touch. Silas placed a hand on the soil near the hollow, feeling the same pulse as yesterday. But this morning, it was different. The patterns in the soil seemed more deliberate, almost like they were forming symbols just for him. "Jibby," he said, "look at this. I think it's trying to communicate." Analysis confirms. Patterns suggest structured signaling. "Likely attempts at information transfer," the AI replied. Silas smiled. For hours he observed the rhythms, the pulses, and the soft shifts in light from the fragment and hollow. He noticed that the signals changed based on his hand movements, his breathing, and even the tilt of his head. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the pulses began to form shapes in the glowing dust, shapes he could sketch and compare over time. By midday, Silas had filled several pages of his notebook with diagrams of lines, dots, and glowing patterns. He realized these were not random. They were messages, memories encoded in energy. Each pulse seemed to represent something important, something the fragment and the soil wanted him to understand. "I think it's telling a story," he whispered to himself. "A story of what happened here a long time ago." Jibby hovered closer, projecting holographic grids and diagrams over Silas's notes. Recommendation: focus on repeating patterns. Likely indicates significant events or concepts. Silas leaned back, squinting at the symbols. Some looked like simple lines, others like abstract shapes resembling organic forms or tiny machines. As he studied them, he felt a strange sense of familiarity. The designs reminded him of the irrigation probes, of the robotic cattle, even of some ancient schematics from the old colony archives. "It's like a map," he murmured. "Not just of the land, but of something buried here, something important. The ground pulsed more strongly, and the glow from the hollow shifted to a soft, warm, golden hue. Silas realized that the land was responding to his understanding, almost as if it could sense when he comprehended a part of its story. Each new insight strengthened the pulse, as though the hidden entity beneath the soil was grateful for his attention. Around mid-afternoon, Silas noticed a subtle vibration rising from deeper underground. He carefully adjusted the resonance tool and placed it near the hollow.
The device began translating the energy pulses into faint melodic sounds. Silas listened closely, letting the tones wash over him.
Each note seemed to correspond to a symbol in his notebook, creating a harmonious language he could slowly interpret. Jibby... This is amazing, Silas said. It's like it's singing its story to me. Observation confirms structured sequence of signals, likely memory-based. Interpretation ongoing, Jibby replied. Silas closed his eyes and let the melody guide him. He felt as though he were traveling through time, witnessing moments long before humans arrived on Red Mesa. The pulses told of a crash landing. An ancient spacecraft, small but alive in a way humans might not fully understand, had buried itself beneath the Red Plains. Its occupants had intended to create a sanctuary, a place where life and technology could coexist. Somehow, the sanctuary had become dormant over centuries, leaving only subtle pulses and hidden patterns in the soil. So, the fragment is part of it, Silas murmured. It's alive in some way. Not dangerous. Just waiting. Jibby beeped. Entity appears to be highly adaptive. Likely connected to fragment as central communication node. Energy readings indicate stability improving with your presence and attention. Silas's heart raced. He had stumbled upon a secret older than the colonies themselves, a living memory embedded in the soil. The hidden wound beneath his ranch was not just a relic. It was a conscious entity, waiting to share its story with someone patient enough to listen. Excited but cautious, Silas decided to test a theory. He placed the fragment gently in the shallow hollow and rested his hand on the surrounding soil. He concentrated, moving his fingers slowly in circular motions above the glow, as though conducting an invisible orchestra. The pulses responded immediately, shifting and forming new patterns. The melodic vibrations grew richer, more complex, as if the entity were speaking directly to him. Silas traced the shapes, noted the sequences, and began connecting them in his notebook. Slowly, a picture emerged. A blueprint of the hidden sanctuary showing tunnels and chambers beneath the soil, filled with crystalline structures and stored energy. The pulses also hinted at instructions for care and maintenance, ways to preserve the entity without harming it. This is incredible, Silas said softly, awe in his voice. It's like it's asking me to be its caretaker. Jibby projected a holographic image of the sanctuary as best as the energy readings could interpret. Silas gasped. The underground chamber was intricate, full of glowing crystals and winding passages. Energy flows weaved through the soil like rivers of light, all connected to the fragment he had discovered. It's beautiful, he whispered. I never imagined anything like this. The sun began to set, casting long shadows across the canyon. The glow from the hollow shifted again, warmer now, almost like a comforting light. Silas felt a wave of understanding wash over him. The entity was not trapped, not angry, not lonely. It was simply waiting for someone to care, to listen, to understand its story. He realized that the discovery had changed him. Red Mesa was no longer just a place to live and work. It was a living story, a hidden memory waiting to be nurtured. Silas knew that he had a responsibility, not just as a rancher, but as a friend to this ancient entity. Jibby, he said, standing and brushing dust from his clothes, we're going to take care of this, slowly. Carefully. No rushing. We'll figure out how to keep it safe and happy. Recommendation noted. Status calm, entity response positive, Jibby replied, lights flickering in approval. As the twin suns disappeared behind the horizon, Silas sat beside the hollow and watched the glow. He traced patterns in the dust with his fingers, mimicking the rhythms of the pulses. The melodic hum grew softer, almost like a lullaby, and he felt a deep sense of connection. For the first time, he understood what it meant to be part of something much larger than himself. Night fell over Red Mesa. The stars sparkled in the clear sky, reflecting in the glowing patterns of the hidden sanctuary beneath the soil. Silas leaned back, letting the gentle vibrations wash over him. He imagined the long-ago travelers who had created this place, wondering what they would think if they saw him now, listening, learning, and caring for the living memory they had left behind. "This is just the beginning," Silas whispered. "I don't know everything yet. But I'll learn. I'll understand. And I'll help." The glow pulsed once more, softly, as if acknowledging his promise. Red Mesa was alive in a way no one had ever noticed before, and Silas Granger, cowboy and caretaker, had become part of its story. The wind whispered through the canyon, carrying the faint hum of the fragment in the soil. The hidden wound beneath the ranch was no longer silent. It had found a listener, someone patient enough to hear its song. And in return, it offered a bond, an unspoken promise of trust and understanding. Silas watched the stars and the glow, feeling a quiet joy he had never known before. The frontier was no longer just a place of dust and rocks. It was alive, full of secrets, memories, and stories waiting to be shared. And he would be there every day, listening. As he finally turned toward the homestead, Jibby at his side, Silas felt a sense of purpose stronger than any he had ever known. The fragment, the hidden hollow, and the land itself were no longer mysteries. They were friends, teachers, and guides. And tomorrow he would continue to uncover their story step by patient step. For now, though, he allowed himself a quiet smile. The frontier had given him a gift, one more valuable than gold or cattle, a connection to something eternal, a secret pulse beneath the soil, and a story that would last forever. The morning air was crisp on Red Mesa, the twin suns slowly climbing the sky to bathe the canyon in gold and orange light. Silas Granger stepped out of his homestead, the soft red dust crunching under his boots. Today was different. Today he would try to stabilize the hidden sanctuary beneath his ranch. Jibby hovered beside him, lights flickering in anticipation. "Energy readings show increased activity. Entity seems responsive to your presence," it said. Silas nodded, adjusting his wide-brimmed hat. "Good. We've come a long way, little buddy. Let's make sure it stays safe and happy." He approached the glowing hollow where the fragment rested. The pulse beneath the soil was steady but strong, almost like the heartbeat of a living creature. Silas ran a hand over the fragment's smooth surface. The glow shifted under his touch, brighter and warmer. "All right," he murmured. "Today we help you, little one." He had spent the past 2 days studying the pulses, the melodies, and the patterns. He understood now that the entity beneath the soil was intelligent, adaptive, and highly sensitive. It needed care, attention, and patience, and Silas was ready to give it that. Using his tools, he began constructing a stabilization cradle around the hollow. He used soft red soil, small stones, and some of the crystalline material he had carefully excavated. The idea was to protect the entity while keeping it connected to the surface and the fragment. "This should work," Silas said, placing the last crystal carefully on the edge of the hollow. "It's like a little home, a safe space." Jibby hovered closer, analyzing the structure. Cradle appears stable. Energy readings indicate reduced stress in the entity. Response, positive. Asked, "Good." That's what I wanted to hear. Once the cradle was ready, he placed the fragment gently back inside, letting it rest in the center. He closed his eyes and placed his hands on the soil surrounding it. Almost immediately he felt the pulse change. Softer, calmer, more rhythmic. It was as if the entity was responding to his care. The melodic vibrations returned, richer and more harmonious than before. Silas let the sound wash over him, guiding his hands as he adjusted the crystals and soil to create an even balance. Every movement he made seemed to bring a gentle sigh from the hollow beneath. Hours passed. Silas worked carefully, never rushing, letting the rhythm of the pulses guide him. He realized that the entity was teaching him as much as he was teaching it. Each adjustment he made was met with feedback. A change in pulse, a shift in glow, a tiny variation in the melody. By midday, the cradle was complete. Silas stepped back, wiping sweat from his brow. The glow from the hollow was soft and steady, the melodic hum calming and peaceful. The pulses beneath the soil were gentle, like a satisfied heartbeat. Jibby chirped softly. Entity stabilization confirmed, energy readings optimal, status calm and connected. Silas nodded, a sense of pride swelling in his chest. "We did it, partner. You're safe now." For the next few hours, he sat beside the hollow, observing the pulses and listening to the melodies. He sketched the patterns in his notebook, noting changes and shifts, learning more about the entity and its environment. The more he watched, the more he realized that the sanctuary beneath the soil was not just a structure. It was a living story, a memory of travelers long gone, preserved in energy, soil, and crystal. "This is amazing," he whispered. "I'm living history. I'm part of it now." Gibby hovered above him, projecting holographic diagrams based on the energy readings. Silas studied them carefully, noticing that the patterns matched some of the abstract designs in his sketches. The entity was sharing information, teaching him how to care for it, how to preserve the harmony between itself, the fragment, and the land. As the twin suns began to descend toward the horizon, Silas decided to try something new. He carefully traced a pattern in the soil above the hollow, mimicking one of the melodic sequences he had noted earlier. The pulse responded immediately, brightening and shifting to match his motion. The melody became more complex, like a song rising from the earth itself. He grinned. "You like that, don't you?" he asked softly. The pulse seemed to respond with a gentle rise and fall, almost like a nod. Silas laughed quietly. "Well, I'm learning your language. Soon we'll be able to communicate better." Hours passed, and the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the canyon. Silas felt a deep sense of connection with the land. Red Mesa was no longer just his home. It was alive, intelligent, and full of wonder. The fragment, the hollow, and the entity beneath the soil had become friends, teachers, and companions. As night fell, the canyon was bathed in a soft violet light. Stars sparkled above, mirrored by the gentle glow of the hollow. Silas leaned back on a rock, watching the pattern shift and pulse. He thought about the long-ago travelers who had buried this sanctuary beneath the land, wondering if they would recognize him as a caretaker. He hoped they would, for he had come to love the hidden world they had left behind. "Gibby," he said quietly, "tomorrow we explore more. There's so much to learn." "Confirmed," Gibby replied. "Entity remains stable and responsive. Observation recommended." Silas smiled, letting the night air fill his lungs. He felt a warmth in his chest, a joy he had never known before. The frontier had given him a gift more valuable than anything else, a connection to something eternal, a living memory preserved beneath the soil. The next morning he returned to the hollow with renewed purpose. He spent the day observing, sketching, and communicating with the pulses and melodies. Each interaction brought new understanding, new insights into the sanctuary, and new ways to care for the entity. The rhythm of life beneath the soil had become a part of him, just as he had become a part of it. By midday, Silas had discovered a way to enhance the connection between the fragment, the hollow, and the surrounding land. Using carefully placed crystals, subtle energy channels in the soil, and gentle movements guided by the melodic pulses, he created a system that allowed the entity to stabilize itself while remaining connected to the surface. "This is perfect," he said, brushing red dust from his hands. "You're safe, happy, and free to grow however you want." Entity response, positive. Energy readings optimal. Status thriving. Silas leaned back and watched the twin suns begin their descent. The canyon was peaceful, the glow of the hollow soft and steady, and the pulses beneath the soil rhythmic and calm. He realized that he had accomplished something extraordinary, not by fighting or controlling, but by listening, learning, and caring. "This is what the frontier is about," he whispered. "Not just survival, not just work, but discovery, connection, and understanding. And now I'm a part of it." As the night settled over Red Mesa, Silas allowed himself a quiet moment of reflection. He thought of the long-ago travelers, the mysterious fragment, and the hidden sanctuary beneath the soil. He felt a deep gratitude for being chosen, in some way, to care for this living story. The wind whispered through the canyon, carrying the soft melody of the pulses and the gentle hum of the fragment. Silas closed his eyes, letting the music and rhythm fill him with peace. He knew the story was far from over. There were still secrets to uncover, patterns to decode, and lessons to learn, but he also knew that he had found his purpose, and that he would never be alone in the frontier again. Red Mesa was alive, vibrant, and full of wonder. The hidden wound had healed, not through force or magic, but through care, patience, and understanding. And Silas Granger, Cowboy of the Cosmos, had become the guardian of a living memory, a connection between the past, the present, and the future. He stood, brushing the red dust from his clothes, and mounted his hover horse. The twin suns dipped behind the cliffs, casting long golden shadows across the canyon. Silas took a deep breath and looked back at the glowing hollow one last time before riding toward the homestead. "We'll continue tomorrow," he said softly, "and the day after that." "Step by step, pulse by pulse, we'll uncover all your secrets." The fragment pulsed faintly in response, like a quiet acknowledgement. The melody beneath the soil rose and fell in harmony with the wind. Red Mesa, the land he had always called home, was no longer just red dust and rocks. It was a living, breathing story, waiting for anyone patient enough to listen. and Silas Granger would always be listening. As the stars sparkled above, the canyon whispered in rhythm with the hidden heartbeat beneath the soil. Silas smiled, feeling a deep, quiet joy. The frontier had revealed its greatest secret, and he had been there to witness it, care for it, and protect it. The story of Red Mesa, the fragment, and the hidden sanctuary had reached a new beginning, one filled with wonder, hope, and infinite possibilities. Silas rode home, the pulse beneath the soil steady, the melody lingering in the air, and the future glowing brighter than the twin suns above.